feminist thriller. Yes.
Yeah, with a true female anti-hero.
Yeah.
Which I feel like
Right.
you don't see every day. No.
Yeah. Should Kamala Harris coming to so, you know, the job of producer is many things to many people. I run into people all the time that, you know, say they're producers. And I think it's worth noting that Tyler is the ultimate producer who takes really total responsibility for the project, which is to say that he, and we'll get into the specifics on this project, but you know, has a creative vision, brings that to the work, and also mobilizes the money to support it, and is independent. Which is to say, going out to make a film, not knowing whether the film will deliver, return, make money, break even, or anything else.
That's true. We're threading the needle every time. And to your point about what kind of producer I am, so as Jay alluded to, there are creative producers who are really involved in the creative process from the beginning with the script development, script selection, script development, through the casting process, the hiring of the key personnel, being involved every day on set, putting out fires nonstop, and then through the post-production process. Very much creatively involved through the edit, the finishing of the film, taking it to the marketplace to try to sell the rights for distribution, and then beyond. And I very much play that role, but as Jay mentioned, my company also puts together the financing. So doing both of those things is pretty rare in the business. And in many ways, I fell into that particular model of producing because I realized that the money was what was going to give me access to good material. So I decided that that was going to be something that I was going to incorporate into the process, and it's worked for us. It comes with challenges, of course, too. The filmmakers, meaning the director, the writer, sometimes the lead actor, sometimes are very dubious of the fact that I represent the money, and there's a sort of an inherent distrust that I'm on the side of the creative vision of the film and the best possible creative version. What I have to convince them of, which is helpful, is that an independent film, I think, and I have always felt this way, that the most saleable, most viable, most valuable film is the best film, the boldest film. The version that is executed closest to the writer-director's vision. So it takes time to see that through with them, but I think it's worked out, and it definitely did here.
Yeah, there's a lot of trust building because, you know, you need to convince them that yes, you are facilitating their ability to act on, to create a vision and to implement it, but in a collaborative spirit. So on this particular project, let's hear about how it came to be. In terms of the story, you hired the director, yes?
No, so this movie came to me as a script that I was sent at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, through an agent. It was written, directed by John Patton Ford, and Aubrey was already on board. So she was already attached to the project, not only to star in it, but also as a producer. So they came to me initially looking for money, but they also needed a lead producer. So I was able to step in and play both of those roles. But I loved the script right away. I felt that it was a quick, entertaining read, but also had something to say. You can do one or the other many times. You know, either of those things can work. But I find that if you make something that is just entertaining but doesn't have a lot to say, that people forget about it like that. So we wanted, certainly as an independent film, something that could provoke ongoing discussion, and hopefully that was the case.
May have been what caused Joe Biden to eliminate the student debt.
Right. Would Emily the criminal exist in the current Biden administration? I don't know.
Well, there you
that was
go.
one of the tough conditions.
Immediate impact, immediate gratification. My son thanks you. Actually, I thank you because my son can't afford to pay his student debt. In any case, all right, so this is one of the number of ways that the project can develop. And we'll talk about Take Shelter tomorrow in the same regard. So they came to you, they had a significant element. Aubrey Plaza is a rising star, a hot property in the entertainment industry, presumably. I don't really know totally. I mean, her background is television.
Yeah, she is known and respected. She did make her name for herself as a comedic actress, most notably on the TV show Parks and Rec. But I did feel, I mean, she's done a lot of films. She's done a lot of Sundance films. I've seen things from her as an actor that I, very much thought that she would do something great and surprising and different in this role. And when I met with her and found that she was so all in, that's really what I was looking for.
Yeah.
What was her passion for this? Because to make one of these movies go, it's not just the execution on camera. There's so much that goes with it, to have her support throughout and through the promoting of the film and during sales and into release has been beyond critical. So I felt that from her from the jump.
But she wasn't an actress that could simply walk through the door at Disney or I don't even know who's financing movies in terms of the studios this day, or even maybe Netflix, I don't know, and just get it done. So they needed an independent producer who could see the vision, be passionate about it, and do it as a truly independent project.
Yeah, that's right. And she loves doing these films. I mean, she has played roles in big budget movies and studio films, not lead roles, but she does both. And she loved this project, this script. I will say that subsequently, after we made this movie and showed it to people in the industry, she got an audition for Francis Ford Coppola's new $90 million self-financed passion project called Megalopolis. And Aubrey was shooting White Lotus 2, the HBO series. It was shooting in Italy. And she did a Skype audition with Francis where she just did some scenes and lines from this film, and she ended up getting cast. So she's one of the leads in Coppola's new film coming out.
Great. Well, there you
Very
go.
happy for her.
Yeah. That's one of the old adages in the movie industry. People that you work with once and they become huge and you continue working at the same level as you were in the first place.
Very much the story of the independent producer.
Yeah. So, okay, so they came with the script, with the package of the director and the actor, and you said yes. And you said, let me go out and see if I can raise the money.
Essentially, yes. I said yes, but we need to bring this budget way down for it to make sense in the market, because again, I am representing the creative vision, but also the investors. So I something that I think that I'm pretty good at is gauging independent film market value. And knowing that, hey, we got to get this thing into Sundance, it's got to do well, and this is sort of the range that it could sell for, and I back into budgets that way. I don't go into the process saying, wow, this movie is going to cost X. I say, this is what we need to make it for. And then that's
and that's no small amount of skill to determine what an independent film might generate in the world of distribution, because the vast majority of independent films don't generate anything in distribution, or very little.
That's true, and you always have the potential to completely wipe out, and I've had that happen. I mean, it's scary in the way it is right now. If you don't get into Sundance, you're already knocked down a major level of financial value. That's how perilous it is.
Yeah.
Like if you don't get into Sundance, you're going to lose money. It's that
Right.
simple.
And when you're talking about not getting into Sundance, there are basically 15,000 films submitting to Sundance for about 120 slots, and that includes world films. And so in the American narrative competition, you're looking at about 16 films that are programmed.
Yeah, it's really difficult. I've had 7 or 8 films premiere at Sundance. I've been very fortunate, but every time I think, wow, this could easily not get in. I have no people say like, do you know people? No, not, I know who the programmers are. I never take it for granted. Every time I get in, I think it's miraculous and amazing. So.
Yeah, but they know who you are, more to the point. And for better or worse, I mean, I think we could get into a whole long conversation about Sundance, but Sundance, I think, sees as part of its mission enabling viable, creative, effective producers because they know what that platform is worth. And so it's not truly, Sundance is not simply weeding through 15,000 titles just, on the basis of, what do we like.
Right. I know that they're watching my film.
Sure.
Not
So
every filmmaker can say that.
Right.
You send it off, who the hell knows? You get a letter the day after Sundance starts that you didn't make Sundance.
That's right.
So I don't take it for granted, but I do know that the films that I submit are being watched.
Sure. And so, and in terms of just selling a film, I mean, given that Netflix is producing so much of its own content, the streaming services are doing that, Apple is doing that, and that your path is best served by getting some theatrical exposure. And you see it that way, is that right?
I very much do, and I say that coming from a place of having many films in recent years not get true theatrical releases. The model that independent films have, that the industry, the distributors have embraced in recent years is called day and date. And it means that they will put it in some theaters, but they want to make it available on home video on the same day. So they're trying to activate some of the theatrical elements, trigger reviews, some buzz around the theatrical exposure, but then make it available for everyone in the country. They save a lot of money doing it that way, and it's a common model. Unfortunately, when you come out through a day-and-date release, the movie comes and goes, and it has almost no shot of breakout success. How do you discover a movie that you've never heard of or heard very little of on Netflix? I mean, how many movies are on there? What is your algorithm? What are they feeding you? Are they feeding you this? I don't know. So without theatrical exposure, you just don't really have a shot. And we took less money up front for this deal, knowing it would come out in theaters, so that we would have that chance of separating and differentiating the film and possibly having some breakout success with it. Now, when it lands on Netflix, which it confidentially will eventually, it has a chance to be a streaming hit because people have heard of it because of the theatrical release, because of festival exposure like this.
And it's had nice reviews. New York Times liked it. That's always helpful. Okay, so how long did it take from the time that you made your connection with them to the start of production?
So we shot it last summer in Los Angeles, the height of the pandemic. So it would have been, a couple of years it took, but that was mostly owing to Aubrey's schedule. She would, some of it was COVID related, but she was very busy. And then all of that for a 21-day shoot. So
21 days.
20 days
Wow.
in LA, 1 day in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico at the end.
Wow.
So the final sunset at the beach there in Mexico was the last thing we shot, and
that was the rap part.
It was very, very cathartic, let me tell you.
Yeah. So you shot the last scene last. Good for you. So the based on what your experience has been, so let's touch a little bit in terms of the creative input you feel you were able to bring to the project or did to bring to the project. I mean, you had a number of people attached to start with, so where did you weigh in?
The script was, in my opinion, in very good shape when I got it. We did make some notes sort of related mostly to the timing of the ending from the point of when she leaves the scene with Yusef in the car, the bus, the police come in, she's not there, we end up in another country. On the page, that was a little bit hard to sort of track, so we did spend a lot of time on that. But really the script was in great shape. I think, I really got invested with the casting process. And then obviously, I consider the production nuance relative to the schedule and the budget a creative discussion too, because what can we do? What locations can we get for this amount of money, for these amount of days? Very much, leading those conversations. And just trying to stretch every dollar as far as possible. But and then the edit, I'm super involved in the edit. And this was a movie that I think, if it's successful creatively, that really was born mostly, in my opinion, out of the editing process. It took a long time, and we were very patient and careful with that process. And I did contribute a lot to that.
It's a tight edit. It hits. It has a rhythm, and the cuts are dynamic, and that moves it a lot. It gives it its energy and sort of thrust through the narrative.
I think so too. Yeah, a great editor named Harrison Atkins, a young guy. He did Josephine Decker's Madeline's Madeline. If anyone once saw that, and he's just really a talented guy.
But you have to make fairly sharp deals. I mean, you're doing some tough negotiating to get the talent on board. Am I right about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one thing that we have going for us is everyone's making scale on a movie like this, and we are very transparent about those limitations up front. Everyone, including Aubrey, we deferred our producer fees. John made WGA scale and nothing for directing. So when everyone is sort of on the same page that we're trying to get all the money onto the screen, I feel like people get it and don't feel like they're being taken advantage of, as long as you're transparent with that up front. And we'll see if there's success on the back end of it.
So all the actors working for scale, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,300 a week?
Something like that, yeah.
So,
I mean, less than $1,000 a day.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's take it. There's more that we can talk about, but there are producers who come on to projects and their sole job is to, run the production office and keep the production team organized and to supervise the scheduling and to keep track of the budget, but not to generate the funding for the budget. That's a common sort of producing job. It's not necessarily a creative job. But so the job that Tyler describes is one of, really making the project possible in every sense of the word, and a lot of collaboration is involved.
Yeah, and I say this in modesty on behalf of my team at my company. I have a very strong producing partner, Drew Sykes, but I think that we've consistently had success making these independent films. A lot of it is because the producing is really pretty strong, honestly. Like when I see movies not working, a lot of times that's a failure of producing. People don't think about that element as much because they think that the creative is simply the director and the writer, and in most ways it is, but even our facilitating of the conditions that allow for the director to do what he needs to do is part of our process.
Sure. No, it's really, and it's sort of old school in a way. And I think that, certainly as a director, I've never had that except actually when Tyler was 21 years old, and I worked with him. Because even then, you took charge of making it happen and gave me a lot of space, and you understood sort of instinctively from the beginning that was the way it,
That's really cool to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's true. Anyway, some questions, comments? Happy to hear anything people have to say. Yes? Somebody out here?
Way in the back.
Way in the back.
Is it okay if I project? Can everyone hear me?
Sure.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you thought about the racial dynamics at all, both in terms of Aubrey being white, and so the fact that she was less likely to be considered a criminal when she was going and stealing things as opposed to if she were black, and just sort of the intersectional analysis there, and then in terms of having Yusuf, another character, be Arab with bad Arab accents, and some of them weren't even of full Arab descent. So just why, given the amount of anti-Arab tropes, why make them Arab when you could have made them another race?
Yeah, sure. Well, so for starters, this was a script that had these characterizations as part of it based on this director's life experience. He chose to, tell a personal story to him. Aubrey also, half Puerto Rican. I do understand that she identifies as a white woman or is perceived that way. I think that honestly we attempted to cast the film, as much as we could to sort of the realistic, multicultural landscape of Los Angeles right now. I think that we, tried to bring diversity across the board in ways that wouldn't necessarily pit any particular group as, maybe they have been perceived negatively in other works. So I do, we did talk about race. We didn't feel like this was something that, we felt we needed to, get tripped up on. We felt we were representing a pretty good cross-section of Los Angeles here.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions, comments? Yes.
What does the process look like for you in trying to find works to produce, and how do you discern which ones you go full in on and which ones you kind of let pass by?
So the question is, how does he make decisions in terms of what kind of material to produce?
Yeah, it's tough. I think we get a lot of submissions of screenplays. Many times a director is attached to the project. We really are looking for something that we feel can be entertaining but also stand out in a very crowded market. When you're pursuing this model of sales and production, you have to look at what your plan is, and for us, many times that has run through Sundance or a prestigious festival to take it to the acquisitions market. So we think about, what films are going to appeal to that audience, people that are looking at films of that kind, that caliber, and we very much support strong directorial visions, and we like writers/directors. I feel like many times those are the sort of most confident visions, that can be executed straight from their own work. So there's no secret formula at the end of the day. If it's something that we love, that we feel passionately about, there's a lot of sort of instinct that goes into it. I wish there was, a calculation, but it's more than that.
And agents are pitching you scripts also.
Yeah, we get most of our scripts from agents, and then others are direct from writers and other filmmaker colleagues that I have, friends, things like that.
How many submissions do you think you get in the course of a year?
We probably get 5 to 10 submissions a week.
And you're in a position to be able to produce.
We make, you know, now a couple, 2-3 films a year.
Okay. Yes. Yes, I think, right, I'm sorry, right here. Yeah.
First off, love the film.
Thank you. Thank you.
I had a question about, you had mentioned one of the ways your company has been successful is that you have the money in-house, which allows you to just operate a little bit differently. So I was wondering if you could kind of speak to how that works now, how you kind of came to develop that slate of investors that trust you, because I find that's one of the more challenging parts of filmmaking is when you have good people, and then maybe also where you came from before you developed that.
Sure. Well, where does the money come from? How do we cultivate that and maintain that? And it is in-house in the sense that I have 2 partners that anchor the financing of these movies that I've been working with for many years. But I still go out constantly to new investors. They do put in some money at my company, but I'm always supplementing that with additional investors that vary project to project. And the reason I've been successful is because I've gotten their money back on some films. It's as simple as that.
It's not easy.
Yeah, so it's really about building that momentum. I mean, the first one that really kind of broke through was the one that I'm screening tomorrow called Take Shelter. And that had some success, and we were able to build on that and create a little bit of a run of eking out enough of a return to keep people investing again. But it's, you know, going back to the first film I did with Jay, it took years of just going to everyone we knew for small amounts. Eventually, we kind of had an angel investor come in that proved not to be quite an angel, but that, you know, it's not easy. It's not easy. And then did you ask what my background was before?
No, just and you kind of spoke to it. It was where you were before you got the trust of that kind of set of people.
Yeah.
But it sounds like Take Shelter was kind of that.
Yeah, I had a breakthrough film. It really just came down to that, and you know, up until that point, and it's still not easy, but it's gotten easier. But before that, it was really rough.
Success has 100 fathers, and failure is an orphan.
Yeah.
Right? That's part of it. And yes, and I think also when Tyler says that, you know, actors work for scale, and he deferred part of his fee, and directors same thing. So doing all this work, putting all this together, and standing behind the investors is also something that they respect because they know you have skin in the game. You're not cashing in first and saying see you later.
Well, absolutely not. No. Yeah, and that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Very good.
And they
point.
know you're going to fight for it, and you have a record where you've been able to be successful. That doesn't guarantee success, but it says you know the landscape and that you can navigate it.
Right, and you know, profit participation in our model happens after the investors get their money back. So when they see that, you know, well, they're going to get their money before the creative people do, I think that means something to them.
And this is really an independent, spirited approach that is nonetheless market savvy and working the market. I mean, the movies I make, I mean, forget it, but you know, we believe in audience, but we purposely do not involve investment in the model of the films that I do. And in fact, we work with students and, you know, go a different route, but we do get to make movies, which is great. But we would not, because I just got to a point where representing to investors that they could get their money back, partly because I'm living in Vermont and not working the industry constantly. You spent years going back and forth to LA and developing contacts and relationships with agents and that whole thing.
You have to do what I'm doing, for sure.
You can't just be, hey, here's my new movie.
No.
It's not going to work. Yes?
This is kind of a general question, but when it comes to the overall landscape of the independent producing and picking out talents from, I guess, you know, this crazy pool of talents, writers, directors, what are some of the precedent works that you're looking for? You know, what are the chances, let's say, a director who has only done short films, you know, would you give them a chance when it comes to if they have a great script, or would you look for someone who has probably have been involved with more feature productions?
So the question was, what if a director comes to him whose credits are mostly short films with a feature script? What are the chances?
So John Patton Ford, this is his debut. He had only made one short before this. It was a Sundance short that we thought was terrific, called Patrol, but this was his first feature. I've worked with first-time feature directors many times, and I love that. First or second-time feature directors, pretty much exclusively. I love working with first-time feature directors because they are so on fire for the project, like so on fire for it. They're gonna do whatever it takes to, make it as good as it can be. They're not, coming in, clocking in, doing the job, clocking out. To make a film that has strong vision and is executed on this level, on this budget, requires somebody that is just doing so much above and beyond. But no, we certainly look at some prior work. We have to really have confidence in that person. It doesn't work every time, but for the most part, it's something that I really prefer.
Anybody else?
Thank you. Please
Yeah,
go ahead.
Alex, did you have a question?
No, I'd rather have an audience.
That's
member
Bess,
answer.
right? So
Yeah,
it's Bess or Alex?
I'm just gonna say, could you talk, Tyler, a little bit about the politics of the film? Because that's
Yeah.
what I also thought was great about the film, was that it has a commercial sensibility and it's sort of like a thriller. But it's definitely dealing with some very apropos issues that certainly young people are dealing with in this country. And I thought it was a really great look into, I can
Yeah.
see why somebody would turn into a criminal because
Right.
they had $70,000 worth of, college debt. So was that something that interested you when you read the script?
Absolutely, yeah. I was attracted to the subversive nature of it. Ross Douthat, the New York Times conservative columnist, published a piece 2 days ago in the National Review about this movie. He wanted to hate it, but he couldn't. He did like it, but the point was, he wanted to bend it into a thesis that Emily was somehow claiming that she was a victim of the conditions of society, but she's not. We presented circumstances that were very realistic to many people, and she made decisions accordingly. She certainly tried to get work. She had a record. She had debt. But at the end of the movie, and this was one of my favorite parts about the script, the unapologetic ending. It's like she had money. She was free in another country. She could have gone a different direction, but she doubled down on a path that she felt was best for her. So, I think that a lot of people in this country relate to that character in many ways, and I think that there's an empathy there. You can judge her, that's fine, but I think that there's some empathy that exists with most audiences of the film.
People wonder where all the service workers have gone. Now we know. That's right. Just watch out for your credit card.
Alex wanted to ask something.
Alex, yeah.
She beat me to it.
Oh, she beat you to it. Okay. Now just very quickly, you mentioned that you were thinking of, television more and more. So maybe just a few thoughts on that.
We're getting into television too. For one thing, just to do something different. We've been doing this exclusively for so many years that I wanted to kind of expand on that, especially with the way premium TV is now. It's creatively a very easy cross from what I do to making some of these, high-end, more sophisticated, filmmaker-driven shows. Many film directors are moving and writers are moving into television. There's some really good content out there. And so we got a first look deal with CBS TV Studios, which we're coming out of now, but we have a number of shows in development with them. We've sold a show to Amazon. you know, the thing about TV is there is distribution in TV.
Right.
If it's going to be made, it's going to be seen.
Right.
That is not the case in film. It's a very tough, broken system, I hate to say it, for independent films right now. And so we've loved the process of working in TV as well. Film is my first love. We're never going to abandon that, but we're expanding.
Yeah, well. All right, well, one last question.
Well, I'm just curious, you're saying the film industry is a broken system. Do you have an idea for what a less broken system would look like?
I wish I knew and had that idea. I don't totally know. I really don't. I have a lot of different thoughts about it. I mean, the streamers that have come in, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, HBO Max, Disney Plus, Apple Plus, they all have streaming now, have really changed the landscape dramatically. I'm worried that, especially with the pandemic, that people are very much sort of have been reconditioned a little bit to get comfortable not going to theaters and seeing good stuff. And I worry what that means for independent films. So certainly it's not a threat to Top Gun, but if people feel like this is something that they can wait for on Netflix and not go to the movie, it's going to take this component out of the independent purview. And then how do you get recognized in such a glut of mass content? So that really wasn't the answer to how to fix it, more about what the problem is, but we'll see. I mean, there's, good things about streaming too. I certainly, like watching movies from home as well. It's just, there needs to be a balance and a way to sustain movies like this. So.
It's also a question of where the younger audience is going to be, and I think that a lot of the younger audience is looking at the series more than they are the feature film, except for the blockbuster. And so the question has always been, where's the young audience? And it has not been shown to be coming to the sort of independent feature film, but I think there's certainly demographics that are showing that it is going to series.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with a distributor called A24, but they
handled Marcel the Shell.
Yeah, they're a very good theatrical distributor of independent films, and they have cultivated a brand that young people respond to. But if you are not an A24 film, I don't really know what's breaking out in theaters anymore.
You're right, they're the hip. But older distributors like Sony Picture Classics, even Magnolia, don't have that same, that same cachet. Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much, and thank you very much, Tyler. We'll see you again tomorrow.